You have a new thing up called Wifey School, and you're getting lots of people signing up. So, what is Wifey School about, and how can I help you?
Well, Wifey School is a resource for actually learning what it takes to be a balanced wifey in today's day and age. So there are a lot of traditional values. I share a lot of and come from a lot of traditional value standpoint, but also I realize that we live in a modern world. So we're still dealing with modern issues and people. And for me in particular, I would say, I mean, technically, I'm at the very, very end of Gen X or at the very, very beginning of the millennial generation. And so I think that's a perfect point to be able to relate to those traditional values and also being in the modern day and age and world. And particularly when I was growing up, was very much taught to be the strong, independent woman. And but at the same time, like there's still an undercurrent in my environment of uh, getting married, having the family, that kind of thing. And I was just making a video this morning, for example, and on Instagram, I put it on Instagram and YouTube, so you can see lots of videos and shorts on Instagram and YouTube,
Yeah,
especially YouTube. Definitely subscribe to
for Wifey
both
School.
for Wifey School. And I chose some music for the Instagram reel, which is pretty neat that you can do these days. And so the post was about, if you're not feeling like all lovey-dovey, all X's and O's, right, all the time, and that that may be a signal that you need to address something. And so I gave three principles, three things to look into. And those three things will actually get to the root, are the root of a number of tangential things that come from that. So I'm just trying to get to the root. And one of the things might be that you need a break. We might feel grumpy because we need a break. We need a snack. We might need a break from work. Might need a break from a person. And I'm not necessarily meaning a long break. I mean, it just could be like, I need to go do my own thing. I'm gonna go, I don't know, whatever your craft is, whatever you enjoy doing, go for a walk or something. And so there were three suggestions, and I chose the music. It was, I think it's by Shania Twain or something like that. It I can't even remember the song exactly right now, but it was talking about, oh, she's an American girl. That's not the name of the song, but she's an American girl. She saw her mom going out in heels and pearls, and even though it's not like, I chose that music partly because it has X's and O's in it. And then I thought, well, this is interesting because this is a song that I heard growing up. And my mom in particular would listen to country music, and that was one of the songs I heard growing up. And so it's part of that programming, right? She's trying to make it in her daddy's world. And that implies that she might be dressing in heels and pearls like her mom, but to make it in her daddy's world, she's got to be like a guy. If you're going to be around the guys, I mean, it seems like they're trying to change the environment, or you might be treated differently in the
So you're
boardroom.
saying that there's subtle brainwashing in these songs?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's a long way to say that I know what it's like to feel conflicted like that, where you have these traditional values and you want to be the wife, the homemaker, the mom, and those really homey kind of characteristics, but you were raised to be very different, to be the woman in a man's world, uh, to become like a man in a lot of ways. And I can appreciate in some respects what they say, like what my mom and grandma and so forth were trying to teach, to be self-sufficient, so if you needed to take care of things or needed to take care of yourself. And I'm striving to seek a balance in that way. And so women, young women, whether you're a wifey or want to become a wifey, how do you balance those things? I'm assuming the women who would gravitate towards it in particular do want to be more of a traditional type woman, but no matter what, we're still, unless you're living with the Amish or Mennonites or someone like that, or some culture like that, you're going to be in the modern world, and you're still going to have to face what's going on in the modern world. So I'm going to have to synopsize that quicker next time, but that's Wifey School in a big nutshell.
Yeah.
So you seem rather excited for Wifey School.
Well, I think there's a lot of call for it. I think there's a lot of young people in our society that haven't seen their parents have good relationships, or their parents are divorced, and there's not a lot of traditional training anymore. And so the only thing usually you get from women these days is, be strong, go after it, do whatever you need to do. And instead of when a girl is still a girl, 18 to 25, still a young lady, if not a girl. I mean, that, when I think of an 18-year-old, I kind of think of she's a girl now because I'm 53.
Yeah.
So it's the training is not there from 18 to 25 about getting married. Everybody says, wait till you're in your 30s because you'll know yourself better. And I think if you wait till you're in your 30s, you've wasted, a good 20 plus or 10 plus years, that you could have been married and working on a relationship. And you can still do things, but, as if you learn to live within your means, a young woman can get married and have kids, and the husband can work, but you have to live within your means. Everybody says you can't live on a one person income, but I think you can. You just got to decide what you're going to spend, how much you're going to spend, that kind of stuff.
Well, you certainly have to work together. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
If you're going to do that.
Yeah, I had to let something out. Yeah.
All right. So since I've got you in the car,
got some barnyard smells going on this morning.
So because I have you to talk to about this, and this is not just a solo thing that I'm doing, I'd like to kind of use you as a sounding board in particular.
Yeah.
And what I see happening is that supposedly, if it wasn't just a social engineering project, okay, let's put that to the side. If it wasn't, let's say that this movement to teach women and young women to be strong, independent women, let's say that it was in response to an environment where men were truly taking advantage of women, and women were being left by the wayside, or if they were still married, maybe they had the short end of the stick is one way of saying it, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay, to be more specific, let's just paint a few scenarios. Yeah. So, let's say it's back.
Let me answer your unasked question right now. If men were truly trying to take advantage of women in every aspect, women would have no chance. And men would be locking them down at home. Men would be not letting them have their car. They wouldn't have a cell phone. They wouldn't have access to the internet. They wouldn't have...
Well, that's these days.
We'd be like Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Oh, yeah. We'd be like a Muslim country where women don't have any rights.
That's these days in particular. But what I'm specifically going at is the hypothetical scenario that we are just tipping on the other end of the scale. So let's say that perhaps at the beginning of the feminist movement, that women were really saying, you know what, I want to have a bank account so that if I can have command over my money, or I can...
There were certain women that wanted their own bank account, and it was only a small amount that lived in the cities.
So let's say a woman who had an abusive husband, and back in the day, you basically couldn't get divorced. It was so rare. If you couldn't even have a bank account anyways, you probably didn't have to rely on a bank account so much earlier on. Now, a lot of this is
Why
conjecture,
are we talking
hypothetical.
about a woman with an abusive husband? I'll tell you,
Because I think the response these
500
days,
years from now, there's going to be a woman with an abusive husband.
Right.
Oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
but what I'm
A
hearing
woman
these
has to take
days,
care of herself.
what I'm hearing these days is a response to men, or men responding saying, "I've had enough of this court and this legal system that favors women. She gets the alimony, she gets the kids, she gets the house, and so now they're feeling taken advantage of." So what it seems to me, if I take a real big step back, is that before women felt like they were really getting the short end of the stick, and now men really are. And so is this a kind of
reaction?
A reaction, right? The scales are tipping the other way.
No, I just think that there's men that are not making smart decisions, and that women have shifted from being the gatekeepers and not allowing sex until the man was committed, and then not having kids until, they were, well, sometimes they had kids right away, right? But men were on board with that 50 years ago, 80 years ago. Men were on board with having kids right away because they wanted that too. They didn't want to have kids when they were 50. They didn't want to have kids when they were 30. They wanted to have kids when they were 20. You're younger, you have more strength, you have more vim and vigor. You might not know as much, but that's okay. The human race has survived millennia without people having kids after they're 30.
Well, then also most families actually were on a farm, and so you needed that.
Yeah, but by the time you were
workforce.
30, you were actually wise, instead of having your kids at 30 and not knowing what to do because you never thought about it.
So to go back, just synopsize it real quickly. Do you think that this it seems like a large contingent of men are saying enough? I don't like how women are these days. We can date and have fun, but they're reticent about marriage.
No,
do you think
most
that's
of
in
the
response?
country is not that way.
Okay.
Not at all. There's a few loudmouths on the internet that are that way, and they make it sound like it's bad everywhere. But for most of the country, people are getting into relationships. They're working together. They're striving. They're going through their struggles. Excuse me. We're driving by houses. We're driving by, there's most of the time in a car, you see two people in a car. When you're driving, I look at the vehicles that are coming by, and 90% of the vehicles have two people in them.
So when we first got together, I brought up the idea of a prenuptial, and you said no, because that
predisposes divorce.
It assumes you're already planning for what will happen in divorce.
I don't have health insurance because I don't believe in waiting to take care of myself until I get sick.
So you've been through the court system with having to deal with baby mama issues, and in an era where it was extremely unlikely that a man would get sole custody and so forth.
I ended up with sole custody because there was problems on her side.
Well, that they actually saw, because it doesn't mean, even if there's problems on her side, doesn't mean that the court or judge is going to actually see them, right? So do you think, because you consult men a lot, you work with men a lot, do you think that the court system is better or worse as far as fairness with men as opposed to when you went through that?
I think that... Sorry, this got stuck. There we go. Got stuck up. Do I think the court system is more fair now? I think the court system looks at things a little more realistically. They know it's not always in the child's best interest to be only with the mother, even no matter how old the child is. I think that they're looking at, since women have become more like guys and they do more irresponsible things, there's a lot more women with driving, citations and drunk driving and, getting arrested for different things like that. And so since that's the case, it does look more equal to when a judge looks at things. They go, well, the husband did, well, this woman, this mother has a record too, not just the father. And so it's more like who is more capable of taking care of the child these days. We know guys that have gotten custody of kids, and that's, it's a good thing for the kids to be with the more stable parent. I'm not on the side of men or women either way. I'd be on the side of the children, right?
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, oh shoot, I just forgot the question.
So we've seen, it's quite a road for a guy to get custody. But,
oh, I remember.
Yeah.
You have actually told guys, counseled guys, you should actually get married so that they have rights regarding custody.
If you don't marry the woman, you don't have as many rights as if you do marry the woman. Yeah. I mean, it's a little different nowadays, but being married does equal the playing field. And if you're married for a shorter period, it's not that the woman's just going to get 50% of your stuff. There's a lot of hyperbolic bullshit going on online where people are like, no, we don't get married. No, I'm not giving up 50% of my stuff. Well, again, that predisposing you're going to get divorced. I didn't marry you with the idea I was going to get divorced. I've been married a few other times. I didn't get married with the idea I was going to get divorced. I got married with the idea that I was getting married, and that was it. Well, I had a few other situations where the situation went south extremely fast. I was only married for a year, under a year each time, because if it wasn't going to get fixed, and if I couldn't fix it and the other person wasn't willing to work on it, I wasn't going to stay in it. So that was just leave with what you came with,
Yeah. I've heard recently some advice. Basically, it sounds like attorneys coaching to do a prenuptial that would essentially do that, right? You go away with what you came in with, or something that's a little more, at least preventing the court from willy-nilly assigning or allocating 50-50.
Even if you get a prenup, attorneys are coaching for prenups because that's their business, right? And so even if you get a prenup, if you neglect your spouse, no matter who it is, if the male or the female, neglects the spouse and cheats and does all, the judge can still say, I'm awarding this to her or this to him, whether whoever had more assets that came into the marriage with more assets, the judge can still do whatever the judge wants to do and say, I'm going to award this to you because you were abused. Maybe there was physical abuse. Maybe it was from the woman to the man. Well, the judge will probably say, why'd you put up with it? And the man will say, well, we had kids. I was trying to work on it, and vice versa, right? Women say that too, right? I stayed because we have kids. I was trying to work on it. Don't you think you should have left a little sooner? Yeah, I probably should have, but, and then the judge can award whatever they want, right? And so I think, going into, so like I sign a lot of contracts, and my contracts are signed based on non-disclosure, right? So it's proprietary knowledge, intellectual property that I have or that my customers have that we're going to have to reveal some things to each other while we work together. But we sign that we're not going to reveal to anybody else what that stuff is. Or if they teach me something, they might say you can only use this on our products. Or if I show them something, I might say you can only use this on this job. And it's still a gentleman's agreement, right? We're signing contracts, but we still have to follow based upon our integrity, right?
Yep.
Because you can do a lot of things, and if you don't get caught, the NDA doesn't matter. If you do get caught, they still have to take you to court for it, and then they have to spend the money to sue you and all that. So I do understand contracts, and somebody can still not pay you even though you signed a contract, and then you have to sue them, and the court can still say, no, they don't have to pay you, So it's kind of a double-edged sword either way. First of all, what you should be getting into contracts with people that you feel very strongly that you can trust. right? And that's a marriage, for better or for worse, for richer or for poor. It doesn't say for the more money we make, the more we're going to love each other. You know, the bigger house we have, the longer we're going to stay together. It doesn't say that. You know, we didn't say that to each other. You go with the bare minimums and you hope for the best, right? And that's where all these people are messing up, where they're trying to talk about every single thing before they get into a relationship moving towards a marriage. You get to know the person, you get along with them. The number one thing you should check is how flexible they are, right? You should see if they're willing to change dynamically and shift in good directions, right?
So what might be some examples of that? I agree, and I think that's actually a good reason to get together earlier.
Yeah, because you're younger, you're more flexible.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're younger, all you have reference in your mind is how you were raised, right?
Right.
You saw what your parents did. You saw, they put a
But-
Le Mans course out on that.
But you're still more
Interesting.
malleable.
Yeah, you're still more malleable. You know, you're more likely to be giddy in love and flexible and shifting and changing your thoughts and getting to know the other person and adapting a little bit. As you get older, you get more stringent in your thoughts, right? You get stricter in the things you'll put up with or you won't.
Right.
And so I think it's better to get together younger. I met you when I was 30. We got married when I was 30 and you were 10 days before your 19th birthday. And I was not stuck in my ways, but what I was doing was living life the way I wanted to and working towards, obviously, first of all, my survival, and then working towards my goals, right? So you have to have a baseline in life, right? You have to have money coming in every day, or you have to have a pantry full of food so you could last a month or two without money, right? And then you got to try and have multiple streams of income. That would be great, right? And then if you have excess, you got to decide what you're going to do with that excess. If you're in business, do you invest it in your business? If you're in marriage, do you invest it into your life? Do you put it away for retirement? Do you all these things. So I think people should be occupied with that type of thing rather than, well, I got to make sure that this woman doesn't get 50% of my stuff. You don't just get married and get divorced 6 months later and she walks away with 50% of your stuff. That doesn't happen. And if it does happen, you better decide where you're living and what the jurisdictions are saying and all that type of thing, right?
Do you think, let's say that I was the same age when we met, but you had been 25?
It wouldn't have worked.
Do you think there's any point?
I was a rather immature 25-year-old.
How about 28?
And meaning I was rather immature, I was only focused on what I was doing, right? So if I was married previous to you and I had significant relationships previous to you, but I did all the stuff that I did, right? I was only doing the things I did. My relationships were auxiliary, right? Or auxiliary. They were auxiliary. They were separate, and when I had time for the relationship, that's when I did the relationship. I didn't prioritize it. It wasn't a daily thing. Even when I was married, I would come home, but I wasn't, I could come home at 10 o'clock at night because or I'd be in the garage working on my race gear, my snowmobiles, my motorcycles, that kind of stuff.
So what flipped the switch for you that your relationship became primary?
Well, I got old, right? I was 30, right? I mean,
yeah.
And I realized I was slowing down. When I met you, I wasn't racing motocross. I started again after I met you, mm-hmm. right? And I hadn't raced for probably a year, maybe a little over a year, and maybe for 2 seasons I hadn't raced, something like that. And me and you got together, and my son wanted to race, and because he had taken a year off, and then he was like, "Oh, I want to race," and we'll race again. Okay, here we go, and so anyway, I prioritized the relationship, because didn't know how to do it before. I went through multiple relationships. I figured out some things and then came to some conclusions on my own when I was single that if I had another relationship, which I didn't honestly think I was going to because I thought I had kind of figured out that there wasn't any good women out there. That's what a lot of these guys are going through. That's why they're all kind of doom and gloom, about it, right? Once you find the person you're supposed to be with, it's an entirely different world. I was satisfied coming home and just being with you. I was satisfied not working out as hard as I was before. I was happy to, go for walks and talks and stuff like that, where I wasn't willing to do that before.
Do you think that point is different for each guy?
I think it's pretty much when a guy turns 30. I mean, yeah, there's some younger guys that are probably mature and into relationships and want to have kids earlier on, but I think 30-year-olds are a pretty safe bet for a gal. I'm not saying all 19-year-olds should go out and find a 30-year-old. I'm just saying, if me and you met in the middle, your maturity was much greater than your age, and mine was much less than my age. So I always say we met in the middle. We're both about 25.
Yep.
So I think that girls, gals, young women don't have to look for older men, but I think there's, when a guy's, 28 plus, he's seeing the world in a different way,
Yeah.
He's like, oh, wow, I'm going to have to, if he's living at home and he's 28 plus, you don't date him. But if, let him get out on his own and be a man, but if he's already, I was out on my own for a very long time since I was 19. And so being 30, I had my own place, my own vehicle, my own business. I had a martial arts school, my own business. I'd had a 16-year career as a tool maker. I was a professional martial artist. I was a professional snowcross racer, and I was a motocross racer and a flat track quad mountain bike racer. I had a lot of things under my belt, and I had kind of gone through those testosterone-filled years where, you're kind of a testosterone junkie or a
Testosterone and adrenaline junkie.
Adrenaline junkie, yeah. I mean, that's, you love to go and do stuff that pushes you. When you're 30, you're like, well, you've had a few injuries. They didn't heal as fast as you got closer to 30. You start, reality kind of catches up to you, and you go, yeah, I'll slow down a little bit. I'll settle down a little bit. And then when I got together with you, I got all excited again and got on the motocross bike again.
Yeah, I hear statistically for first relationships, most men and women are 3 to 4 years age difference, the man being older. And I actually think it's even more of an advantage for that he's older, and at least that amount of years. I mean,
4 or 5 years is a good.
I think that's a minimum.
Good. Well, it's a good minimum, but it's a good spread, and 5 to 10 years is probably more realistic. We're 12 years apart, but 10 is, I think, is very realistic.
Yeah. Now, there's something, hypergamy gets talked about and is sometimes pronounced hypergamy. Oftentimes is solely equated to like a man's ability to produce more and be of a greater status. And I think something that's not looked at enough is also his mental, emotional capabilities being greater than a woman's. That a man doesn't really mind if a woman, or even prefers, let's say, that a woman makes less money and is less intelligent. I think there's even a necessity these days which falls into the play of women being the strong, independent woman and being equal with her man. I think what that does is it encourages them to be equals, and what then it does is it erases the attraction, because I think she does need to look up to him in as many ways as possible, if not like always. And it's not always just like, oh, he makes a lot of money, or he can physically protect me. It's like, wow, he knows how to do those things, or I can always go to him and if he doesn't know the answer, he knows a way to find the answer. And I think that's a really healthy way to be, where most of the time the guy has the answers, right?
It never hurts for the guy to be accomplished, have some money or a career, and it doesn't hurt if the guy is um, more, intelligence comes in many ways. So a guy needs to be emotionally intelligent. He needs to be conscious of at least his job and life in general, environmentally aware, that type of stuff. But I think it breaks down to, and we're at our destination, so we'll probably close this out right now, but it breaks down to men try to accomplish and women compete more. That's the hypergamous thing. I think, if you worked at a place in an office, let's say I was making 80,000 a year, and you worked at a place and you were maybe a programmer, a computer programmer or something like that, and you were making 110 a year, I wouldn't have a problem with that. If you're making 500,000 a year and I'm making 80,000 a year, there's going to naturally be a disparity in the quality of the person, right? The quality of the person meaning that you can have every night of the week, you could have a $300 dinner. Every night of the week I couldn't on my income, right? And so you're probably going to be used to more. You're going to be used to just buying a new car every couple of years, and maybe you're leasing, but maybe you're not. You're going to be used to flying to whatever destination you want to 3-4 times a year, and the cost doesn't matter. You might even fly first class that many times, right? And that's very difficult. That's a difficult transition, well, for a woman, because women generally won't spend their money on a man, right? There are some, but generally they won't. But a man will always spend his money on a woman, even if she has more money than him, because he won't. The guy generally won't care unless he's intimidated, and that takes maturity to not be intimidated, right? And the woman will look down on the guy if she makes more money than him, if it's drastically different. If it's close, I don't think either person would care. If it's drastically different, then the woman is more going to care than the guy would, right? If the guy was making 500 grand, the woman making 80, guy's going to just tell her, if you want to stop working, you can. I could support both of us. But I don't hear or see many women doing that. Hence, men are 10 times, 100 times, a million times more generous than women, and men have a quality of caretaking that women don't have for men. Men have it for women. Women will have it for children, but not for men.
I've heard that affirmed in a number of interviews and shows I've been watching, where even
But I
women.
think if your business started making let's say my business is only making 100 grand a year, and your business that you currently have starts making you a half a million a year, I don't see a problem between us. Yes, I've helped with the business and that kind of stuff, but and I can always give advice on different things. But also, if you just came up with a brilliant marketing scheme, marketing plan, or whatever you want to call it, and you started making a half a million a year, and it was outside of my suggestions, I wouldn't have a problem. I'd be excited for you, and also I'd never even ask for money unless I had to. If I was still making the 100 grand and I was covering all my stuff, and I was even putting a little away, and I was able to buy a mountain bike every year and get a car and make my payments and stuff, I would never ask for any money, you know,
So to go,
because I'm a guy. I'd just be like, well, I don't need it.
I agree to the point that the men are way more generous when it comes to that, what you just spoke about, them sharing even if they make less money. And just to affirm, without going into details, but just to affirm what you're saying, I've heard in several interviews women who are even making six figures or multiple six figures saying that they still expect the guy to pay for 90 to 100% of the expenses and even the extras. So I just wanted to
which is
confirm
really
that.
sad.
And
I
I
mean,
myself, as I've made more money, have actually had to address that in myself, thinking, I know John has been tremendously generous with me. Why am I even balking at, this or that, and it's been in a number of
well,
situations.
and there's jokes amongst men. What's mine is mine, what's mine is hers, and what's hers is hers, and not mine. I mean, it's a joke,
Yeah.
and guys are like, yeah, my wife won't give me a buck, but she asks me for money all the time, and she makes just as much as I do. you
Mm-hmm.
know and I think that's sad. I think if women truly want equality, or they truly want to be seen as equals, or work as equal partners with their husband in a marriage, or be equal husband and wife, in you know yeah, if there's kids to be taken care of, obviously the woman is more instrumental when the child is young and crawling and breastfeeding and all those types of things, and the man is more instrumental when the kid is a little bit, 9, 10, 11, adventuring out a little bit and learning about the world a little bit. And maybe if it's a boy, for sure, the guy is going to be instrumental. If it's a girl, I think the dad needs to be there also, but not in the same way as with a boy.
Yeah, it's naturally different.
Yeah. And so I think women should. I think women, me and you have been married for 22 years, and I have been the primary breadwinner for at least 20 of those years. And now your business is cranking and bringing in a good chunk of change. And I'm not asking for any of the money unless I have to. Like if we get down, my business is on trends, right? And if the economy is slow and work is not coming in, yeah, I'll borrow some money from you. I shouldn't even have to call it borrowing, but I do. you know.
Well, where I was actually going, rather than talking about money, hopefully we can wrap this up quick on this, because this is actually more particularly where I was going, is because everybody talks about the money part of it, but what doesn't get emphasized is the e- emotional and mental intelligence. And I think that a woman not only financially is aiming up, but she's aiming up for a more mentally and emotionally mature and capable guy. And I think that aiming up in that way helps to keep her looking figuratively up at him as well. If he's like, you know, when they first meet, he might be, let's just say, if there's 10 steps, he might be 2 steps beyond her. I think the more, so to see him striving and growing and changing is always staying a couple steps ahead of her, I think also makes for a healthy, ongoing relationship.
I always tell guys, read.
Yeah.
If they say they have a problem, I recommend a book. If they say they have a relationship problem, I recommend a book, because if you keep reading, you do stay ahead, you stay ahead of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you and I 22 years ago fell in love and we're at different levels, I was older than you, so there was things that I had done and been in life that
Your
you
breakdancing was just like level upon
yeah,
level better.
there's all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But it I tell guys, read a book. Read a book a month. If you read a book a month, you're probably reading 6 to 7 more books a year than your wife or your girlfriend is, right?
But it's
And
not a competition.
it's not a competition, but like you said, I feel I do need to stay ahead, not of you, but ahead of myself where I'm at right now, right? I
Mm-hmm.
need to improve myself. I'm not, then if I'm trying to stay ahead of you,
You look behind. It's
you
like
might not be very smart. And it might be very easy for me to stay ahead, and then I will do less
yeah.
than what I would do if I wanted to stay ahead of myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then what are you comparing, and how are you figuring that out? It's not a competition.
Yeah, it's like the racing not even an analogy, but the principle of race your own race. You're not, don't keep looking back and see who's behind you. You need to keep looking forward and have your eyes on your own prize and
Can you
goal.
pass the guy that's right in front of you? That's the goal.
But then when you're out in front,
Then
you
you
have to,
need to race your own race and
yeah.
stay ahead and not try to be defensive because you slow down.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
That's
well,
great.
there we
Nice.
go. Bam. All right.
Thanks for hooking us up.